Hello, my dear students of grade 4. I hope you are all fine and doing well. Today, inshallah, we will continue chapter 2, lesson 2. What are some life cycles of plants? So before moving to the life cycle of plants and knowing what does it mean, we need to remember that plants are very important organisms living on Earth, and they can make their own food by using a process as we learned in lesson 2, chapter 1, which is a process called photosynthesis. So let's first remind ourselves with the photosynthesis. So if you look at this picture, you will see that we use plants for everything, for shadow, for clearing the air, for having beautiful smell, for example, um, in the garden. So we use plants for a lot of things, but one of the main uses we need plants for is that they actually give us oxygen, which we need to breathe. Here we can say how are plants used for medicine, fuel, because we use wood to burn things, for also building, like building ships from wood, and clothing, cotton, food, and making paper. So basically, plants are needed for many things. Since plants are living organisms, they are also in need for food. So they need to make their own food to grow up and survive, and to give us what we need, like the oxygen, and food, and medicine, and stuff like that. So plants are known to be producers, which means that they make their own food. They make their own food by using the sunlight, the nutrients from the soil, and the carbon dioxide from the air. Let's look in here. You'll see that plants are the only living organisms that can do this. None other organisms can do that. For example, we as animals, we are actually included with the kingdom of Animalia. We need food, but we cannot make food by ourselves. We can cook food, but the products to make the food are actually bought by us. We need to buy them first and cook them and do stuff and add things to them so we can eat them later. But we cannot make the food like the plants in here. Plants actually build their food. They use all the materials around them to make the food they need. So the process by which plants make their own food is called photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the process by which the plants use the sunlight or the light energy to actually grow and perform. The word photosynthesis is actually two words, but we put them in one word. But it means two things: light for photo and synthesis for putting together. So putting together with light. So they put everything together, like carbon dioxide from the air, the nutrients from the soil, the water, and along with the sunlight, they can make their own food. So in here, if you look closely at the leaves, which are the main organ of the plant that's actually responsible for making the food for the plant. So the plants do not start making food by themselves unless they have leaves. Okay, so before growing leaves, plants actually are using the food from the seed. That's what we learn about later. So leaves here are the one responsible for making food for the plant. They capture the sunlight. If you zoom in, you will see that it takes the water from the soil and carbon dioxide from the air. So yes, plants breathe in just like we do, guys. We breathe in the carbon dioxide from the air and breathe out oxygen. We do the opposite. We breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. So we need plants for oxygen, and plants clear the air from the carbon dioxide that our bodies do not need. If you wanted to ask me how do plants breathe, if we zoomed into the leaf, you'll see small openings on the surface of the leaves that we call stomata. And stomata enables the plants to exchange gases with the surrounding. So like the nostrils, for example, or the nose we have, it enables us to breathe in and breathe out. Stomata here helps the plants to breathe in and also breathe out. Let's move to the next stage. Plants, or I'm sorry, to be specific, the leaves, they need water, they need carbon dioxide, but without the sunlight, the plants will not be able to grow in a healthy way. So they also give the light energy as they contain chlorophyll in their seeds. Remember, chloroplasts are found only in the plant cells. That's right. So chloroplasts contain a chlorophyll or a green substance that actually absorbs the sunlight. So here is showing you the cell or the plant cell to be specific. You can see the green organelles in there. Those are the chloroplasts that contain chlorophyll, which is a green chemical that absorbs the sunlight, will take in the sunlight. And here we can say glucose and oxygen. Both of those are products from the photosynthesis process, like plants take in carbon dioxide from the air, they take in the sunlight, the water from the soil, and then they start producing or making the food. The food here is called sugar, or we have another word, glucose, and they also produce oxygen. But oxygen in this case is actually a waste. The plants do not need oxygen, they actually breathe it out. But we do need this oxygen, so breathe it in. That's why we need to plant more trees and more plants to help us clear the air and have enough oxygen for the whole planet. So, as a summary, guys, now we know that photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, or we can say it's a process where the plants, to be specific, the leaves, take in the carbon dioxide from the air, the water from the soil, okay, and absorbs the sunlight because they have, as we said, chlorophyll in their cells, and they do that to produce the food they need, which is glucose, or we can say sugar, guys. In your case, glucose is a word you you can use it for your own knowledge. It's good to learn more than to learn less. But for you to know the food of the plant, it's actually sugar. Okay. And also produce oxygen, which is a waste plants do not need. So here to summarize everything about the photosynthesis, we can say that plants use carbon dioxide along with water with the help of light energy, of course, and chlorophyll, which is found inside the chloroplasts, which are organelles found in the plant cells only, to produce glucose, which is the food for the plant. The plant needs glucose to perform, to grow, to make seeds, and everything. And also produces oxygen, which we then which we then use for breathing. Okay, so we can solve this one here. Oxygen is a product. Chlorophyll is a helpful thing because it's the one responsible for absorbing the sunlight. Carbon dioxide is a must. It's like the air that the plants breathe is in. Light energy is also a must because without it, the plants will be so unhealthy and will be yellow actually, not greenish, like in a healthy way. Water is a must. Without water, the plants cannot grow. And glucose, which is also called sugar, is the food for the plant. So guys, now you learned about the photosynthesis, which is the process for which plants make their own food. Then we'll move to the next part of this lesson, which is plants from seed. How do plants grow? What is the life cycle of plants? What do we mean by life cycle? So before moving into the life cycle, guys, from the previous information about how plants produce oxygen, and they help us to make medicine. They help us as food products. They help us to build ships, for example. That's why we need to take care of plants, because it's very important to take care of them and grow more plants and not cut more. So the first word or vocabulary we're learning about in this lesson after the word photosynthesis is life cycle. What is a life cycle? Well, life cycle stages, or we can say phases, through which living organisms go through. It's the beginning of the living organism till the end of its life. We have two life cycles, or both animals and plants do have life cycles. Plants do move into different stages to grow into a whole plant with flowers and they produce seed. And also, animals have their own life cycle, like caterpillar here. That's what we will learn about in lesson 3. So again, life cycle is the stages, we can say the steps a living organism goes through from the beginning till the next generation is made. In this lesson, we'll talk about the stages of plants' growth. We have 3 stages: germination, seedling, flowering. Those are big words, but it will be easy for you guys to learn about them. Germination, seedling, and flowering stage. After flowering comes pollination, that we will talk about later, inshallah. Okay, let's move to the first stage, which is germination. Germination is when the plant starts to grow, and actually roots grows first in the plants. So when the plant starts growing, like this seed in front of you guys, can you see how the roots are coming out from the seed coat? This is what we call germination. Again, this is the first stage or the first step in the plant's life cycle. So this is what we call, again, germination. So when we say what is meant by germination, we say it's when the plant starts to grow. The second step or the second stage in the plant's life cycle are the seedling stages or the seedling stage. In this stage, the plant actually starts growing its stem, roots. The roots are already complete, but it has now a complete or grown up roots, stem, and also leaves. Leaves are very important because they are the food maker for the plants. So this stage is what we call, guys, seedling. We do not have flower in this stage. So when the plant is complete with roots, stem, and leaves, that's what we call, again, seedling stage. Before forming leaves, actually, plants use the food in the seed. So yes, the seed of the plant contains tiny plant and also food for this plant to help it grow its roots and stem. When the leaves grow, when the plants grow their leaves, now they will start making their own food. They do not need the food from the seed anymore. Stage number 3 is the flowering stage. And this is when the plant grows and develops flowers. Flowering stage is the last stage you're learning about in the life cycle of plants. And from its name, flowering means it's when plants grow and develop flowers. Later, you'll learn that flowers are the ones responsible for making seeds. Flowering stage. Then we have pollination. And pollination is a process that leads to making the seed. What is pollination? Before knowing what is pollination, we need to learn about the male and female reproductive parts of the flowering plant. And yes, plants do have male and female reproductive organs or help them to make seeds. Because in order to make seeds or to make any living organism that is actually multicellular, we need both male 6 cells from the father and female 6 cells from the mother. We're going to move into this in details, but we need to learn that also plants have female and male parts because we need both cells, the male one and the female one, to join together and make seeds. In here, in this picture, you saw how this is actually the female part, this is the male part. In here, the stamen or the male part, you don't have to know them with names, but just learn the whole idea. You can see a particle moving from the male part, which is this one thin with a yellow looking like structure over it. You can see how the pollen moved to the stigma, which is this green part. This is the female part, by the way. And here you will see pollen from the male part moving into the stigma, which is the female part, and going through it to form the seeds or to join the eggs first. So, again, in here, we have the male part and the female part. The male part produces structures called pollen. Pollen, again, pollen. And this pollen, this one, needs to join the egg inside the female part. Like in this picture, you can see the pollen moving from the male part over the stigma to join the eggs inside the ovary of the plant. And here, pollen moving will stick to the stigma and then will move through the carpel to join the ovules or the eggs of the female part. When the egg joins or is joined by the pollen, seeds are now made, which we call actually pollinated egg. Again, the pollen, which is now it's called pollination when the pollen is moved or moves from the male part to the female part. And now the pollen will join the eggs, which we call fertilization now. When the seeds are formed, the flower, those are the seeds, guys. When they are formed, the female parts will actually swell up to form a fruit. This is the flower, guys. You see that the flower turns into a fruit. Again, the pollen joining the egg. This is the egg cells. Okay. After joining them, they will form seeds. When the seeds are formed, now the fruit will develop into, the flower will develop into a fruit. This pollination or this process needs the help of a lot of organisms. But basically, all the most famous ones in helping the pollen to move between the flowers are the bees, or most insects. Can you see how the pollen is covering the body of the bees? Okay, if you looked in this one, this picture here, you will see that the bee took the pollen from one flower to another to help in the pollination. So the pollination could happen inside the same flower, which we call self-pollination. This is also for your knowledge, guys. Or it could be cross-pollination with the help of other organs. be actually also with wind and by water. Can you see here? Those dots are the pollen and how they will move with the water to join the female part and then make seeds. You guys get this part. So again, before learning what is pollination, we had to learn about the male and female parts of the plants. So for you guys to know that there are male plants or flowers and female ones. Sometimes they could be bisexual, like having both male and female parts. In order to form the seed, a pollen, which is from the male reproductive parts, need to join the egg in the female parts to form seed. Again, here is the pollen, and the pollen will join the egg inside the flower. All of this, guys, happens inside the flower. After joining together, now it's a pollinated egg because now it's joined with pollen. They will develop into seeds, and since now we have seeds, the flower will turn into a fruit with the seeds inside of it. When the animal then start eating the fruit, the seeds will fall on the ground and then grow into a new plant. Pollination, again, the word pollination means when the pollen joins the egg to form a seed. It could happen by the help of insects like the bees, some birds actually also help, or it could happen by the wind or by the water. So basically, guys, we learned about germination, which is the first stage in the life cycle of plants, the seedling stage, where we have now a new plant with fruit, stem, and leaves. And then the flowering stage, where the plants start producing or growing flowers. You also learned about pollination, okay? And pollination is for the pollen to move from the male part to the female part to join the egg and then form seed. When the flower is pollinated, which means pollen joins the egg, now it will turn into a fruit. Now the other type of plants, which are the plants from spores. Some plants do not develop seeds, as we learned in lesson 2 in chapter 1, the non-vascular plants. Remember, non-vascular plants are plants that do look like plants, but they do not have roots or stem or leaves. They do not have real ones, but they have structures that look like roots and stem and leaves. They do not absorb the water by their roots, they actually absorb them directly by their cells. Remember those things, guys. They were in chapter 1, lesson 2. So some plants grow from spores, and spores are unicellular structures that grow into a plant. If we look closely in here, in this picture, this is fern. It's a type of vascular plants, but do not make seeds. Like they cannot make seeds. So they are produced, or they produce new generations by these unicellular organisms on their leaves. Can you see them? The brown small things. Those are spores. And each one of those contain a tiny plant, or will then grow into a whole plant. Again, you can see the spores over the surface of the plant. Now these spores will then fall on the ground and grow into a whole new plant. This is a whole cycle, so this is a life cycle. So some plants do not produce seeds, but they grow by something else called spores. And those are unicellular structures that then grow into a whole plant. That was lesson 2 for you guys in chapter 2. Thank you. See you next time.